Welcome to the Boosting Achievement ESL podcast. I am your host, Dr. Carol Salva. In this podcast, I'm chronicling my journey of learning about supporting new arrival students and the teachers who teach them. If you want today's show notes, please type into your browser, all in capital letters, bit.ly/BA podcast. All in capital letters, and you are looking for episode 126. I am sorry that I have not put out a podcast in a while, but the second edition of the Boosting Achievement book is out, and we are doing training events, and I've just learned that I'm not a good podcaster and writer at the same time. But I'm going to make up for it today. Let me tell you about this guest. This guest, I'm going to just start with, he was deported when he was in the 8th grade. He came into his classroom, called him by name, and he and his family were deported at that time. And prior to that, in elementary school, he was learning English. And so he failed the 1st grade. He missed months of every school year because they were farm workers. And so they were on the migrant circuit following work. Very hard childhood. And so many educators out there, this is hitting very hard. I'm sure this is hitting very close to home for you now, more than ever, when you think about our families. But let me tell you something else about my guest. Dr. Francisco Jiménez is an author, a professor, so accomplished. You might know him from his very, very popular books about being on the migrant circuit, told through the eyes of the child. Very popular books, The Circuit, Breaking Through, Reaching Out, and Taking Hold. And those 4 books are included in the American Library Association's book list, 50 best young adult books of all time. He was also selected as the U.S. Professor of the Year by Case and the Carnegie Foundation for the advancement of teaching. He's been recognized by the Department of Education, by the California State Senate, and the governor, and the state of Jalisco. He's been recognized for so many things. There's an elementary named after him and his brother Roberto in Santa Maria, California. I know he's very proud to have won the John Steinbeck Award. That award is very prestigious and given to writers and activists and thinkers who capture Steinbeck's empathy for marginalized populations. I know he's proud of that. Steinbeck comes up more than once in this interview. So see if you can catch his name a couple of times. And please stick around for after the show so that we can go through some takeaways that I had. You will have so many. You will have so many. I'm so grateful to Dr. Jiménez for being my guest. And I am grateful to you for being here. So let's go listen. But I can't believe I'm getting an opportunity to talk with the young man that I've heard your voice in my head for so long. As a little boy, in middle school, and then in high school. And I didn't realize that there was another book, Taking Hold.
Yes, and there's a 4th one.
That one's on its way. I found it today. It's on its way to my
Oh my God.
But I love
so now you're disappointed because I'm an old man.
Oh, stop it. You are a legend. You're a legend. But I want to tell you, your books resonate with every student I've ever. It's like magic. It's like it's compelling. It's what we say is compelling input, where you don't have to convince them to read along with me. It's everything. It's everything. I just want to thank you so much for your work.
Well, thank you. I saw some of your work on your website.
Yes.
Done a lot of work. My God,
Thank you
yeah,
for that.
such a
I,
big heart. There's a cartoon, and it's a doctor examining a teacher. He does a X-ray. He says, "You have a big heart," and she says, "I do." He says, "Yeah, that's because you're a teacher."
isn't that beautiful?
Yeah,
Isn't that beautiful? Because
yeah,
you devoted your life to teaching too. And it definitely isn't, and they say it's hard work, but it's heart work. It's
yes, it is.
we're not staying in it for the money. You could make more money doing other things.
That's right.
It's the,
It's a
it's
vocation, isn't it?
yes, yes. And it's just beautiful that you devoted your life to that
Yeah.
too. I connect with your story so much. Um, my parents were immigrants from Mexico.
But they were. Oh,
Yes.
I didn't know that. Huh.
My
Uh-huh.
father was born in the United States, but they didn't speak English. And
Uh-huh.
like like your brother Roberto, they would hit him
Yeah. Wow.
when he spoke English. I am proud to say that it came full circle.
Uh-huh.
When I did become a teacher later, I put my kids in dual immersion programs. And
Absolutely.
so
We have two of our grandchildren are in dual immersion school, and they're both totally bilingual.
isn't that beautiful?
Yeah,
Isn't
it
that beautiful that it is such an asset?
is.
And when we read your stories of how you felt as such a young child, I love that you write your stories from the point of the view of the student because the kids can identify with the feelings, the teachers can identify with the feelings. And if you can't, the book helps you have empathy
Yes.
for what it must feel like when you're not, when you're not valued or when you feel some sense of less than because you don't have as much English.
Yeah.
It's just really, it's just really, they're so powerful. Your books are so powerful.
Thank you.
No, yes, yes. And so people are listening to this. I will put some definitely the links to your biography. There's so much. The other day I was speaking to a lot of newcomer teachers and just ESL teachers. And I tried to put up a slide with your accolades, and it's ridiculous. There's so much awards that you've won and all of the things you've done that I had to like just kind of pop out some major things so they could see, oh my gosh, how accomplished. But if you could give us just an overview of, I talked a little bit about there are a series of books
Uh-huh.
where you write about your experiences and how you came to the United States. And can you give us just a little bit of an overview of that?
Well, from reading the book, I was 4 years old when my parents left Mexico, and we crossed the border without documentation. And we began our life in Santa Maria, California, living in a migrant camp called Tent City, where we began picking strawberries for Ito, a Japanese sharecropper. And then after the strawberry season would be over, we would then go to the San Joaquin Valley near Fresno, Visalia. I don't know if you know the geography. And we picked grapes for raisins. And then we would then move to another little town called Corcoran, California, where we picked cotton. And then we would return during the winter months back to Santa Maria to spend the winter months there. And did not return to Tent City because there was an epidemic that hit the migrant camp, and many children got very sick, including my little brother, whom we called Torito. You recall that? And so the Santa Barbara County Board of Health closed the camp So we were forced to move to another migrant camp in Santa Maria called Bonetti, and it was Bonetti Ranch.
Brandy Ranch, you talked
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
And the owner took barracks from Second World War II for living quarters. So we lived in a barrack all through high school and even college. And so, and that was the circuit, the migrant circuit that we followed every year for 9 years until I was in the eighth grade, and then I was in the classroom, ready to recite the preamble to the Constitution of the United States. We hold these truths to be self-evident. And I was still struggling with English, and so I memorized it, carrying a little notepad in my shirt pocket and memorizing it. And so I was ready to recite it, and the patrol officer came into the classroom, asked for me, and then, we got deported. And that experience was very traumatic for me, extremely traumatic. At that point, I felt that my whole world had collapsed. And so I wish that my name was not Francisco Jiménez, that it had different names so I wouldn't be deported. But we got deported. And then thanks to Ito, the Japanese sharecropper for whom we picked strawberries, he loaned us money, and so that we could survive on the other side of the border and try to get our papers back in order so we could come back with documentation. And thanks to him, he sponsored us. So we were able to come back and settle permanently in Bonetti Ranch. My father, by that time, couldn't work in the fields because he had severe back problems. So my older brother and I got janitorial jobs, working 30 to 35 hours a week each while we went to school. But it was a tragedy for my father because he couldn't work anymore. But it was a blessing for us in a sense that we were able to go to school permanently and not to miss school. Because when we were doing the migrant circuit, I used to miss the 2.5 months of school every year.
Every year.
Every year. And my older brother, Roberto, he missed a half a year of school every single year. So when he was when we finally settled in Bonetti Ranch and were working as custodians, my brother was at one point decided that he didn't want to go on to school because he had missed so much school. So he had fallen so far behind because in high school you get units.
Yeah.
And so, but he stayed, but he graduated from high school 2 years after he should have been, 2 years after he should have graduated because he missed so much school.
Yeah.
So, those were, and so those experiences really were based on those experiences is when I decided to do the writing. But the impetus for the writing didn't start right away. I can tell you as a child, when I was tired of moving constantly and missing school, and I yearned for stability, for a place to call our own. And where I found a sense of stability was in learning. That whatever I learned on my own, carrying that little notepad, where I used to write a different word in its definition to improve my vocabulary and my English, because English was my most difficult subject. I failed first grade because I didn't know English well enough. And so what gave me the sense of stability was learning. Uh, that whatever I learned on my own and whatever I learned in school, that knowledge would go with me, no matter how many times we moved. So that doesn't then it doesn't surprise you then that I went into education.
Your first teacher, our first teachers are our parents.
Yes.
They're our first teachers. And when your mom told you, when your house burned, in that notebook,
Oh, yes.
the notebook that meant so much to you burned with it. I could hear my grandmother and my mother when your mom would tell you things like, but it's not, do you know the things that are in that book?
Yes, yes. We were living in Orosi, a migrant camp. And the place we lived in burned down, and we lost the few things that we owned. And so I lost my little notepad that was very, very dear to me. And so I was crying, and my mother, being the loving and caring mother that she was, she said to me, Panchito, I know you're upset, but we should be thankful to God that no one got hurt in the fire. And I said, see, Mama, but I lost my little notepad. Then she looked me straight in the eye and she said, Panchito, do you remember what you wrote in your notepad? And I said, see, Mama. Then she said, then not everything is lost, mijo. That was a big lesson for me. Yeah.
Such a big lesson. And for all of us, like that really struck me. I just feel like that's so important what your mother taught you and is kind of teaching all of us when we think about it. What you learn, you get to keep. You get to keep everything you learn. Similar to Roberto, I graduated 2 years later than I was supposed to graduate.
Exactly.
But when I look back, I can give the examples of people who maybe didn't graduate right on time, but where are they now? Where are people now? It's like when you said you felt like your life collapsed when you were deported. I think it's so important to think about a journey, not a moment.
That's right. Correct.
Your whole life is such a testament to that.
Yeah. You know, when we were living in Bonetti Ranch, the migrant camp, there was a man whom we called Don Pancho, who was also there undocumented. Don Pancho, like my parents, never had the opportunity to go to school, so he never learned to read or to write. But Don Pancho was very, very intelligent, very talented. So after work, we would sit around Don Pancho and listen to him tell us all these wonderful folk tales and legends and ghost stories that he knew, like La Leyenda de la Llorona was a common one.
Oh, yeah.
And I love listening to him tell these stories. And so when I began writing the book, I lamented the fact that I had not had the opportunity to record all of his stories and folk tales, because if I had been able to record them and then transcribe them, it would have been a bestseller.
Because he was such a good storyteller. And that's
an wonderful storyteller. And there's so many people, as you know, in our society who are highly intelligent, highly talented, but for various reasons, in our cases, because of poverty, you have to work to survive.
Yeah.
But imagine if everyone had the opportunity to go to school and feel good about being in school and without any fear. and being supported, we would have a much stronger and healthier society.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But as you pointed out, there's so many ways that we learn along the way, and this is one of what Don Pancho was one. Mr. Lema, my sixth grade teacher, was my other one that I loved to tell the story about him. We were living in Visalia in a migrant camp, and I started the sixth grade for the first time after having missed 2.5 months of school. And so I was really behind my classmates. And so Mr. Lema, I asked Mr. Lema to help me with my English because I was still having difficulty. So during his lunch hours, he would help me with my English. He became my best friend in school, and he valued my cultural Mexican background. He found out that I loved music and and Mexican corridos, Mexican ballads. So so then he offered to teach me to play the trumpet.
Oh my goodness.
And so I got very, very excited about learning to play the trumpet because I heard that sound in Mexican corridos. And I was so excited about that, so that I went home and I was ready to tell my parents how excited I was. And then when I opened the one-room cabin where we're living, everything was packed in cardboard boxes. So we moved and never saw Mr. Lema again. But
Oh,
but Mr. Lema, I carried him in my heart because thanks to him, I decided to be a teacher. I had no idea what it meant to be a teacher, but I wanted to be like Mr. Lema.
oh my goodness.
And one of the things that Mr. Lema did, besides helping me learn English during his lunch hour, was that during class, he put a map of California. And then he said to me, uh, uh, Francisco, please come in front of the class and you read the names and the names and in this map. He said, because many of them are Spanish words and I don't know how to pronounce them, and I know you will pronounce them correctly. So I got up there and I started saying San Diego, Santa Barbara, San Francisco, and I felt so good that I felt part of for the first time I felt part of the class, that I was valued. And so that was another. So I wanted, thanks to Mr. Lema, I I became a teacher. And when I started this research for the circuit,
Yes.
I went to the valley looking for Mr. Lema to thank him personally. I never found him
Oh,
because I just couldn't. But
yeah.
anyway, he's one example of.
He's in your heart. You know, in the book, you write about him and you talk about how he didn't speak Spanish
No,
and
he
you couldn't, you
no,
couldn't communicate with him.
yes, he was
From
Portuguese.
that desire to communicate. And
Yeah,
somehow, as a young person, even without fluent language back and forth, you knew you were valued. He
that's
gave you that.
he
He
gave
gave
me
you
that sense.
that in different ways.
Yes.
I didn't know the story about the maps. I'm
Oh,
very
no,
happy
I
to.
didn't put that in the book. I didn't, yeah.
I think that's very, very important. There's an educator in Sacramento or near Sacramento. His name is Larry Ferlazzo. And Larry's written many books. He's still teaching high school. He does a lot. And he has a lot of books on motivation,
Uh-huh.
on student motivation, but he's using motivation research. And
Yes.
really these four things he talks about for intrinsic motivation. And one of them is a sense of competence from the young person. If you don't have that, it's going to be hard for them to be motivated if they haven't had any little wins any little wins in front of and we can set those up.
Mhm.
Like Mr. Lema did for you. That's exactly what he did for you, is held you in high regard and showed the rest of the class we should hold Francisco in high regard for this.
And for teachers to take advantage of the experiences that the child brings to the classroom. And Mr. Lema, for example, saw that I knew Spanish names and I could pronounce them correctly. So he took advantage of that to share with the other students.
So beautiful. And I know teachers listening, that speaks to our hearts, because everybody wants to have an effect on their students, and we do, and you don't even get to see what effects you have on students out in the future.
There was another teacher in my sophomore year in high school. And this was, her name was Mrs. Bell. And Mrs. Bell was a wonderful teacher, and very demanding. So she would ask us to read for pleasure. And at that time, when I was working in 35 hours a week,
35 hours a week and going to high school.
I didn't have a lot of free time to read, and we didn't have reading material at home. So I would write. My writing was not really what she expected at first, because I made a lot of grammatical errors. But over time, I made fewer and fewer errors with her guidance, and she guided all the students. Then she asked, one of the assignments she gave us was to write about something we experienced. So I wrote about my little brother, Trampita, who almost died in one of the migrant camps we lived in. And so I turned it in to Mrs. Bell. And when she returned the papers back, I knew that mine was the one with the most red corrections in it.
No.
So she gave it to me, and then she said to me privately, in whispering, "See me after class." And I thought, oh boy, I'm in real trouble now.
Oh no.
So after all the students left, I went up to her, and she asked me, "Is this a true story?" And I said, "Well, yes, it is a true story." She turned around away from me, and then when she saw face me, she had her eyes watering, and she says to me, at that time they changed my name to Frankie. Frankie, if you continue to work as hard as you can, as you have been working, you're going to succeed. And then she said something, and I wish I had remembered to put it in the book, and I forgot. She says, "But you have writing talent." And I thought, wow, really?
Right?
And she said, "You have writing talent," even though I was making grammatical errors. And so, years later, when I thought about writing, I thought about what she said, that I had writing talent. So that was an encouragement for me. She put in my mind a little spark to say, maybe someday I will be able to write. Yeah. So she and then she gave me the Grapes of Wrath to read, and I thought, oh my God, when am I going to have time to read this huge book?
And did you say it was kind of difficult, even a level test?
And she says to me, "Well, you can read it for extra credit," because at that point I wanted good grades. So I said, Oh, well, okay. So after the school day was over, I would go to walk to the library to do my homework before 5 o'clock, when I would then go to clean offices after they would close. So I sat in the library and opened the book, and I always carried a dictionary with me. So there were a lot of words I couldn't, uh, I didn't know, but so I looked them up. But I couldn't put that book down. I got home really late after work, and I continued reading with a lot of difficulty. But for the first time, I was able to relate my experience to something I was reading. That the Joad family who had to leave their hometown in Oklahoma because of the Dust Bowl,
The Dust Bowl.
and they migrated to California, working as migrant workers. And one of the Joe, the young one, protested against the injustices of workers. Remember that?
Yeah.
So for the first time, I realized that my story was part of the American story. And for the first time, I realized the power of literature to move hearts and minds.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Bell saying to me, "You have writing talent," and reading that book, that changed my life.
Thank,
She changed my
what a
life.
blessing, Miss Bell, right? Our teachers.
Yeah,
She,
another blessing.
I
Yeah,
mean, her eyes watering, you in that moment, you're realizing that you can move a person with your words. And at the same time, her giving you that encouragement
that's
and then giving you a book to show you what the words can do for you. Oh my
yeah,
gosh. This,
very- I'll never forget that experience.
oh my gosh. But and the beautiful thing is that that's what you're doing for others. If she knew, I know she would be ridiculously proud to know she had that effect on you.
Yes, yeah. But I did get to see Mr. Penny. You remember Mr. Penny, my high school counselor,
Oh, yes.
helping me with filling out forms. And then had Mr. Osterveen, the Spanish teacher, go to convince my dad to let me go to college.
Yes.
When the book was published, and I had a public presentation at Hancock Community College, and Mr. Penny was there, and Mr. Milo. And so I had um, the opportunity to thank him personally,
Good night.
and it was, I mean, there were tears, but it was a love fest, you
I
know.
can't even imagine.
And I said to him, without your support and encouragement, I would have never been where I am today.
How would you know about scholarships? How would you know about things if they weren't helping you realize what's possible? Even when you got the fellowship to Columbia, it's such a wonderful retelling of how you were sure you weren't going to get that. I mean, it was just one in a billion.
Yeah.
Mrs. Bell was right. You're a great writer.
Well, not that, and it was because of her giving me that kind of encouragement and self-confidence that made a difference.
Yeah, I hope teachers hear that. I think that's something we need to remember, that students are going to meet challenges. They're going to meet with challenges. And right now is more challenging than ever for some of our families and students. So they need the encouragement. They need to remember that there's always hope. They need to remember this is a long game and this is a journey, the kind of things that you're talking about here, wherever you are, you're learning, and that adds to your value of, your knowledge. It's all valuable. If without teachers can have such a big impact to offset
That's
to
correct.
to offset some of the things um that people go through. I think showing them examples. You're not the only example, you're a powerful example. And there are other examples out there of persistence and perseverance and hope and moving forward, just continuing to move forward.
And some of these students know what resilience is because they see from their parents who came from different parts of the world. That's courageous.
It
And
is.
I
It
know they
is.
learn English and they come here and they struggle, but they survive because of their resilience. So their own parents are an example for them to rely on, of having courage to go on, even though obstacles are faced. They face many obstacles.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
when teachers have empathy for them and see the talent that they have and acknowledge it, it'll spark uh, it'll spark a big it'll make a big difference in the child's learning experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. You have an opportunity to really affect their mindset and your mindset,
Sure.
when you stop and realize the effect you're having as a teacher and the growth the student should recognize also.
That's correct. And sometimes as teachers, we don't recognize the effect you're having on your students. Um, because, but for example, for me, um, I'm sure that Mr. Penny and Mrs. Bell and Mr. Lemma did not know what impact they were going to have for me, or on me. And thanks to them, I was able to move ahead and realize my own dream of becoming a teacher. Um, and so and because of them and my becoming a teacher, it has a ripple effect. All my children have gone to school and graduated from college. Two of them are teachers. So it's a ripple effect that goes on for generations, for
Right.
That's why, in my opinion, I have the greatest appreciation, respect, and gratitude to teachers because without them, I would never realize my own dream of becoming a teacher myself. And I have, I have a quote from my favorite author,
Please.
teachers, and it's John Steinbeck.
Oh, wonderful.
And I'll read it to you. It says, referring to teachers, this is what he says, and I quote, I have come to believe that a great teacher is a great artist, and that teaching might even be the greatest of all the arts, since the medium is a human mind and the spirit. Isn't that a beautiful? And that's what teachers do.
Beautiful, Steinbeck. Gosh, it is an art. It's not just I'm going to give you knowledge. If that was it, they can Google everything now. You're doing so much more than that. You're having such a bigger effect than that.
Yeah.
I love sharing those things. I love sharing your story of your journey because understandably, I work with a lot of teachers. I understand that they feel worried about a child who misses months of every school year or has missed years of education. Or right now, we're looking at students who, if they are deported in bigger numbers, there's going to be interruptions potentially. They need to know that
Yeah.
that's a comma, that that is not a period, that we can value all the learning and all the funds of knowledge and everything that child brings. And you can look at a young person like Francisco, and you would have no idea. Who would have guessed that this person would end up where you are? affecting so many and a scholar and with your doctorate and all of the things. That's the kind of mindset we need to keep in mind, is
Absolutely.
that with perseverance, with support, so much is possible. So much is possible if people don't give up and keep moving in that direction. And teachers are here to give that encouragement.
For example, my wife said to me about Mr. Lemma
Uh-huh.
that, you know, one possibility would be for Mr. Lemma to have said, you know, I spent all my lunch hours helping uh, Francisco uh, improve his English, and then he moves away. So what, why do what good did I do? And I said, and of course she knows. And she says, if Mr. Lemma knew what effect he had on you, I'm sure he might have known or he might not known. But look at the impact he had on you. No, he might not think he might have thought, well, I spent all his work at him helping him out, and then he moves, and so what good did I do for him?
And he had such an impact.
Yeah.
I hope teachers hear that. I think we need to hear that because like I said, it's not easy. And you might have thoughts like that. So you'll never know the effects. You'll never know all the effects you have as a teacher. It's just, there's so many stories. And I do think that I hope anybody listening to this that's in education, I hope it honors you for the work that you do out there.
I'll give you another example of that. Uh, Juan Felipe Herrera is a poet, a Mexican American poet,
Okay.
and also went through a migrant experience. He was named the uh, United States Poet Laureate when he was in school, grammar school. He was not engaged in school, and so one time that they sang in school, they sang the class. They sang. The teacher went up to him and said, "You have a beautiful voice," and that was it. That changed his life. You have a beautiful voice. And so he used that voice as a poet. Another story is Luis Valdez, the founder of the Teatro Campesino, who did the film La Bamba.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, he's a dramatist, very well known now. He tells the same story when he was in the second grade, again from migrant family, and he said that the teacher had the class do some masks, any out of paper mache or
Yeah.
whatever. So they made a mask. And then she said, okay, now you put it on and pretend you're the person that you made that you wanted to represent by your mask. So he put it on, and it changed his life because he all of a sudden he felt like, I can do this. I can change things. I can act. I can do this. And he's attributes that experience to his success as a dramatist.
He's super successful.
And he didn't know he had that talent.
No,
Yeah.
changed his life there in that moment. That teacher may not know that.
No, but those are two other examples of the power that teachers have.
I love, I love that. I love that. We watched also the trailer for the documentary. Well, I don't know if it's officially a documentary, Unbroken Sky.
No, it's a dramatic piece.
It follows the book.
It's a 17 minute short dramatic film based on the first chapter of two chapters of Breaking Through.
Okay.
But it begins with coming across the border. And then I won't tell you the.
I know. I know. I mean, we were riveted. So many of the teachers, we were watching it together, just the trailer for it.
Uh-huh.
And we know the story. And we're still riveted because it looks so well done.
It has been submitted to several film festivals and gotten.
And awards after awards.
Yes, and I'm so glad because my purpose for writing these stories is that my hope is that readers of my work will deepen their empathy, respect, and appreciation for all migrants,
Right.
or for all immigrants, many
Right.
of whom are farm workers
Yes.
who work very, very hard from sun up to sundown for very low wages, living in poor living conditions. And what sustains these families day in, day in, day out is the hope and dream of having a better life for their children.
Exactly.
And thanks to their heart and noble work, we are the nation that we are.
That's right.
This film does basically that in a visual form. It is dedicated to all immigrants in every place, in every land. Yeah.
It's
So I'm very happy for that it was made.
I'm sure. Even the trailer, there's a piece where you say your father asks you, why are you studying so hard always? And you say, because I want to be a teacher. And all of the teachers that were watching, everybody went, oh, it's such a reminder that we're all a big part of the success of these young people
Yeah.
and their families. So, no, your work is beautiful. It's wonderful. I'm so happy that people are helping give it even more platforms and more ways because we do, I agree with you. It's not sympathy, it's empathy so that you go, okay, I get it. I can imagine. So can we, instead of sympathizing, can we hold this person in high regard? There's so many things that you can lift up.
And I think it's important to value the experience of the child and the work that their parents do. If they're working in the fields or working in factories or wherever they work, to value their work, to say all work is noble and we should
Yeah.
respect and value every kind of work. The difference is that when you have a good education, you can make choices of the kind of work that you want to do and the kind of life that you want to live. My parents did not have the opportunity to go to schools. But I'm sure that if they had the opportunity that I eventually had, they would have selected a different kind of work that would not be so difficult, so taxing.
Yeah.
But thanks to their noble work, I was able to, and with the support and love and that I received from my teachers, I was able to, make it through.
No, we're so grateful. We're so grateful that you would share that you had the vulnerability to share initially, and then that took off to another book and now so much that we can use and supports us with this thinking.
And my story is not unique. It's really the story of many, many
So
people.
many.
Story. It's our story.
It,
And stories have to be told.
Yes, yes. I've always used it because, again, we look at some of our most marginalized students are not just the ones learning English, they're the ones that are trying to learn English and have missed education because of life circumstances. but now they're here in our classrooms, and there are ways to help accelerate their learning, that we can absolutely support them. And so this is very, very helpful. You've always helped me. You've always been in my practice. And so I just want to thank you personally so much. I know teachers, a lot of teachers are reaching out to me right now and asking me, well, these kids, their families are scared they're going to get deported, and our community is upside down because of the fear right now. I think everything you've said should help us feel like we can support families. Do you have anything that you would offer to people in this particular uncertain time or challenging time to
Yes,
teachers?
well, my heart goes out to these families and their children, because I went through that experience, and so this is, and teachers can be very, very influential in helping these students navigate through these difficult times by showing by empathizing with them. They can offer emotional support to ask them, to feel free to tell their to express their fears, and have students to have trust in the teacher when they tell they express their fears, and say, yes, I know it's fearful, what you're going through. It's painful what you're going through, but don't lose hope, because we're here to help you. We care for you. There's a community who supports you. There are many people outside our school system that support you. And so we want you to realize your own potential, which is tremendous. And so we'll do everything possible to help you out. And also believe in yourself and draw into your soul and see the strength that you haven't tapped into, and look at your parents as examples, and other people who have made it, and you'll be fine. But it's not, and whatever you learn, it's always yours
That's right.
to hold. And so no matter what happens, your education will serve you for a lifetime, no matter what happens. That's what I would say.
It's such an important message. It's always been such an important message, is that we are looking at the whole child. And again, I keep saying it's a long game we're playing. It's not, like my friend Pam Broussard said, it's not a period. This wouldn't be a period. It might feel that way to you, but it's a comma. It's a part of a story, and you decide, and it has to do with continuing to move forward. And you have in you what you need to continue to move forward. I love that message. I love that message. And I have heard that it makes such a tremendous difference, no matter what's happening to a person, to know that there is support, that people believe in them,
That's correct.
that people are rooting for them. If nothing else, that is a message that we need to keep.
During my teaching career, I have encouraged my students, the ones I think are going to be good teachers. I encourage them to go into teaching. And one student asked me, well, what do you have to be a good teacher? And I said, well, it's a vocation. I said, you'll be able to make a difference in many students' lives and enrich their lives. And I said, and one thing that you have to do in order to be successful in teaching is that you have to love your students. And that's it. When you love your students, you have empathy, you'll do whatever you can to help them.
It's true. It's true. They'll learn faster and more if they know how you care about them. even if you have every strategy in the world, it's not about that.
And
Yeah.
listening to you, it's wonderful that when you work with teachers, that you tell some of your own story. And I'll tell you why, because even my grandson, who is in sixth grade now, and I always ask him, "How's how's your day?" "Oh, fine." He said, and I asked him about his teachers, and he said, "I like this teacher a lot." And I said, "Why, mijo?" He says, "Because she shows emotion." And that's
Isn't it beautiful? He wants to be in her class. He wants to be in her class. When I was a brand new teacher, and I was so scared because I became a teacher at 35 and I was never a good student and I didn't know, but God just put me back in the district where I grew up and seeing kids in the lower socioeconomic areas. And in my mind, I was like, you just don't know how smart you are. You just don't realize it. And that became my mantra is we can do more. We can do more. But that emotion and that sharing of your own stories, those kids just did great before I even knew how to teach, Francis. But you're so right. You're so right to tell them lead with your heart and the rest will come. You'll learn how to do it easier and better and the strategies and all that, but lead with your heart with
That's
your kids.
yes. Yeah.
Thank you for showing that to us too throughout your story. I could talk to you forever. I'm going to give you back your evening. But I'm so honored that you took time. It's such an important time for people to get this kind of inspiration. So thank you for recording these words with me and letting people listen to this conversation. It's done so much for me personally, and I'm sure it will have an effect on so many teachers and their
Well,
students.
for me too. For me too. And I appreciate everything that you're doing for in support of teachers, our heroes. Yeah.
Yeah, you too. That's both of us together better. Okay, we'll stay connected. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope to talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye now.
Okay, bye-bye.
I would love to go through all my takeaways, but there are too many. There are too many. I would love for you to reach out with your takeaways. There are things about how teachers holding students in high regard, teachers realizing their effect, even if they're with a student a small amount of time, even if students are only there a part of the school year, even if your child, if the children in your class are scared and fearful, you can have an effect to help them be strong and have empathy and tell them not to give up hope and show them examples like Dr. Jiménez or Emily Francis or so many who have had interruptions in education, and yet their life is this journey and it's not where it ends. So the Steinbeck connections through the interview are one of my favorite things. Of course, he won the Steinbeck Award. And then John Steinbeck is his favorite author, and he read us that quote. So beautiful, and honors teachers so beautifully. And then The Grapes of Wrath by Steinbeck was that big, thick book that his teacher gave him. She held him in high regard. She didn't underestimate his strong desire to learn. It supersedes everything. A person's desire to learn. So thank you, Dr. Jiménez. Thank you for your life's work. You're affecting so many. You've always supported mine. And thank you to everyone listening. I appreciate you helping me with my journey, but I appreciate all you're doing for students and families who need us so much right now. Okay, again, the show notes are at the link. Just type all in capital letters into your browser, bit.ly/BA podcast. All in capital letters, and you are looking for episode 126. Thank you again. I will see you next time. Take good care. Bye-bye.